Going into the 2024 and 2025 English Premier League season, most of us were betting on Manchester City and Arsenal to finish in the top two. But at this point in the season, it has become impossible to ignore Liverpool as the new favorites for the title. It might be an early call, seeing that we aren't even midway yet. So you wouldn't be wrong if you said we were getting ahead of ourselves here. And for that reason, we've decided to hand over the baton to legends of the game because they know better. How do football legends really feel about Liverpool winning the league this season? Liverpool legend Steve Nicol won 10 trophies during his 13-year Liverpool career, and he now has a totally different opinion about his former side. After only 11 games, Nicol already thinks that the league is Liverpool's to lose. It's wild because at the start of the season, Nicol picked Arsenal to win the league and the Reds to come third. But heading into the final international break of the year, Nicol changed his mind. When asked why he's tipping the Reds to win the league on ESPN FC, Nicol essentially said that everyone knows what they're getting from Arne Slot's team at this point, but not so much for Arsenal and Man City, before also pointing out Liverpool's massive lead over its rivals.
I would say very confident.
Would you?
Well, and part of that reason has to do with both Man City and Arsenal though.
Right.
Because they've got a 9-point lead over Arsenal, they've got a 5-point lead over City. Both City and Arsenal, and I think the titles between those three, I'm not including Chelsea in the title race, by the way.
Okay, right.
And those two, we're not quite sure what we're getting from them right now. Whereas Liverpool, we kind of know exactly what we're getting. Everything's settled in their house.
Right.
Whereas the other two are kind of stumbling along. And the longer they stumble and the more points Liverpool get ahead.
Although the former right-back is confident about what his former team can do, another Liverpool legend prefers to act with more caution. Jamie Carragher has called for the club to use the January transfer window wisely if they want to clinch the title. According to the former Liverpool captain, the club really needs a pivotal signing that could be the linchpin for lifting the title at the end of the season. It makes sense, especially when you remember that Slot's first transfer window was relatively subdued. The sporting director, Richard Hughes, only brought in Federico Chiesa. Still, the Reds have managed to win 15 of their first 17 matches so far this season. Carragher thinks Liverpool should consider going back in for Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi once the winter transfer window opens. Carragher then puts Slot's position as a manager into perspective by saying, if you are Arne Slot and let's say an average Premier League manager is at a top club for 2 or 3 years trying to win the league, Arteta has been at Arsenal for 4 or 5 years. You're trying to build something. He might never be in this position again in terms of being 9 points clear of Arsenal and 5 clear of City. There's a long way to go, but we know Liverpool doesn't do silly things in the transfer market. If there's something there right now, do it. But while some pundits fancy Liverpool for the title, others like Gary Neville have entirely different opinions. After seeing what Liverpool has done this season, the Manchester United legend has backtracked a bit on his ridiculous preseason assertion that the Reds will not finish in the top 4. But even at that, Neville doesn't believe they should be considered favorites just yet. At least not by the margin he saw in Sky Sports title predictions. Neville said a few weeks ago, "Last night I got stopped in my tracks because I was on Instagram and I saw Sky Sports post out a title probability percentage. It blew my mind actually. I was mesmerized. Liverpool is 60% more likely to win the title, City 34%, and Arsenal a 4.9% chance. I was like, there's no way that's right." Neville said on the Stick to Football podcast that only 5 teams have ever been this far in front at this stage of the season, and they've all won the league. Although the Anfield faithful would be happy to hear that, we're sure they've learned a lesson or two about counting their chickens before they hatch. Still on the Stick to Football podcast, another Manchester United and former captain Roy Keane explained that Rodri's injury and some of City's other stars struggling might have given Liverpool the edge. "I've never written off Manchester City over the past 4 or 5 years. Even when Arsenal have been brilliant, I back City all day," Keane said. However, the circumstances are different now. Liverpool are doing well. Keane then further explained that he doesn't think the Reds will be out of steam by Christmas. But it doesn't end there. Keane believes we should give credit where it's due and that Slot shouldn't take all the credit for the club's brilliant start. Jurgen Klopp deserves praise for the group of players he left behind for Arne Slot to take over. It does seem with Liverpool that it's all a bit more control. When they're winning games, they look in control. Like every team, if they miss a couple of players, of course they will struggle, Keane said. But we ain't done just yet. Let's see what one of the greatest England players has to say. John Barnes spent a decade in which he made over 400 appearances and scored a century of goals as a left winger. You would imagine that Barnes knows Liverpool more than almost everyone else. Yet, he recently said the club was doing better than expected. Barnes believes Liverpool will push Man City hard for the Premier League title. His optimism comes from the fact that Liverpool has built a strong foundation, so they should be able to keep the pressure on City. Switching gears, let's see how some important figures in the sport feel about Arsenal's faltering and how it helps Liverpool. Former Arsenal striker Alan Smith says that a huge part of Arsenal's stuttering form is down to the absence of their captain, Martin Odegaard, and he believes that the team's over-reliance on their playmaker has led to their downfall early in the title race. As of the time of this recording, Arsenal have been winless in the last 4 Premier League games. Man City has also lost their previous 4 games in all competitions, with Rodri being the most prominent absentee. Smith says that Arsenal and Man City have made these same fatal mistakes to give Liverpool the title race advantage. Meanwhile, United legend Paul Scholes has already decided which side is better placed to challenge Manchester City. Unlike Gary Neville, who backed Arsenal to beat City to the title, Scholes is looking at things differently. The former Manchester United midfielder doesn't believe Arsenal's squad stands up to Liverpool's. He thinks the Reds' midfield shows they're in a better position to challenge City. Although Liverpool have 6 midfielders, any 3 of the 6 could play brilliantly, says Scholes. And really, we have to agree with Scholes, don't we? Alexis McAllister has been balling. Liverpool has found a lot of success being both aggressive and patient when trying to create goal-scoring chances. The team is performing across the board. Salah has been a revelation this season and is thriving under Slot with 8 goals and 6 assists after 11 games. We've seen lots of improvement with Ibrahima Konate and Ryan Gravenberch in particular. Speaking on the Stick to Football podcast, Scholes thinks Guardiola will be more worried about Liverpool than Arsenal. Well, who do we have next? David James played in goal for Liverpool for 7 years, and he was one of the best in his time. Speaking to Safest Casino sites, James said that Liverpool's loss to Nottingham Forest a couple of weeks ago was only a blip, and the club was well on its way to the 90-point threshold required to secure the Premier League title. However, James thinks that the international break might disrupt the team's rhythm, but he reckons Slot is a talented manager who can navigate such problems. Liverpool's squad depth and tactical flexibility under Slot offer genuine hope. Slot's measured approach, Klopp's strong foundation, new ideas flowing in, it's all looking good at Anfield, and that's probably why this next legend is also backing the club. Teddy Sheringham has voiced his support for the Merseyside club. We know Teddy from his time at Manchester United, and there's no doubt that he also has one of the most respected opinions in football. Sheringham explained at the Ladbrokes Gaffer Balaka's event, "I think there are 3 teams capable of winning the title this year, Man City and Arsenal, and while I was unsure about them with the new manager coming in, I think Liverpool will be up there." Sheringham then praised Slot for handling the managerial transition with such a delicate balance, especially considering Klopp's legacy at Anfield. Here's Sheringham being quoted by Liverpool Echo. "Arne Slot seems to have settled in very nicely. I love his way of talking. His approach and acknowledgement of Klopp is the perfect way to keep his players and the supporters on side. Liverpool has definitely seized control of the Premier League title race, but is it too early to call it? Liverpool has notoriously been at the top of the league at Christmas, only to lose the title a staggering 5 times. So it's understandable that some fans might want to pump the brakes a bit on the optimism. Injuries could happen to key players at any time. Fatigue may set in, and a rough patch might be ahead. But will all of these be enough to make the wheels fall off? Is the 2024 and 2025 English Premier League Liverpool's to lose?